Thank you, ma'am, and welcome back. Thanks for coming back. Again, so don't forget the microphone if you have questions, or I'll try to remember to repeat them and whatnot, because the session is being recorded, and we want that to be a great resource for those that are not able to join us, and also for any of you that want to use it as a backup resource as well. Okay, so as promised, we're going to talk now a bit about how to use these standardized metrics or these standardized failure codes to support a strategic initiative that hopefully you have or that you can initiate in your organization around forecasting your equipment replacement needs or your strategic technology plan. Now, I know probably many of you have heard me talk on this topic ad nauseum. I'm not going to do a whole deep dive. We're going to hit some high points and we're going to get right into how to use these codes and these measures. So, as I would say, your technology plan has three really key important benefits to you as an HTM leader. One, it gives you a voice to influence how capital dollars are spent in your organization. You are sitting on top of a treasure trove of data, and you have the ability to turn into information that nobody else in the facility and the organization has. You have the ability to influence if you'll step into this domain. Certainly communicate. We hear it over and over how I communicate with my executives. When you dig into that domain, or you dig into that treasure trove of data and information, you learn how to frame it, how to communicate it in the language of your executives. They're not interested in our techno battle, right? They're interested in what is the big picture, how does this influence where I spend capital dollars, where I spend operational dollars, how does this improve our care, those sort of things. So keep that in mind. And then on the home front, it helps you align where you're going to use and spend and allocate your limited resources in your department with your team. Where am I going to put effort, given what I know about the equipment in our care? It's also a team sport. It's clinical, it's technical, it's business. When you're looking to replace equipment, it's not just about us. We need to be at the table. We need to be talking about the technical life, the technical aspects of a given asset, but we also need to be ensuring that we have the clinical and the business perspective there as well, because this is the very best decisions are made in the middle of the table, if you will. It's the culmination of all those perspectives determining what's in the best interest of our organization. And I'm sure all of you have felt the pain that what was coming out of this table a year ago versus over the last 6 months is dramatically different, right? Because the circumstances changed. If each of these perspectives was only looking from their vantage point, from their perspective, then things would be even more skewed, right? So in good times and in these crazy challenging times, it's incredibly important to take your position in the organization to be a convener. If the other two roles, if the other two perspectives are not at the table, if they're not contributing data and information and perspective, get them to the table, or at least get their perspective to the table. Be their emissary or their ambassador, if you will. It's another great way to demonstrate communication with executives, your ability to demonstrate professional leadership, to bring others to the table, and certainly then to influence the outcome. Okay, so today, in some of my other presentations, we talk a lot about all three areas of scoring. Today, because we're talking about standardized failure codes, I want to stay just laser focused on technical scoring. This is what we should be, can be doing every day in our organizations. So the thing we talk a lot about, the industry factor, is where is the device in life? Is it still being manufactured? Is it still being serviced by the manufacturer? Just because you click both of those, into manufacturing and the service, does not mean you have to take this asset to the curb. There are probably another dozen factors. Two that come immediately to mind are, one, are you a big organization and you have a boatload of these, so you essentially have your own parts depot in a warehouse somewhere or across your organization, right? Or perhaps you bought late, if you will, in the life cycle, right? And these devices are still very functional, right? And you do know that you could probably get some parts, even if you're a small organization, you could probably get parts from third-party sources and whatnot. But this is certainly a very important flag, it's in the life flag, for you to be thoughtful, to be strategic, to make a plan and not wait until you're back in the corner and you don't have parts either of your own or out of the market, right? I'm just going to go out there and say, you don't want to get to the point where you're having to buy parts on eBay, right? Because now you don't have the sources, you don't have quality. Okay, the closer to home factors, your health system factors, the things that are potentially unique to you and your health system, fall in these next areas. The chronological, when did you buy it and install it? Now, I remember a day and time, this is the thing that, well, it's 7 years old, and it's fully appreciated, so we need a new one. I mean, that was common practice. I remember that painfully well. It is a factor, and I'll show you why in a little bit. You don't want to completely ignore the age. Think about when you're at home, and after a while, things just start aging. Like I'm that way with my car right now. It's about this old. It's like a 14-year-old car. It's behaving pretty well, but I mean, little things are starting to present themselves, right? So it's not really a yellow flag quite yet, but it could become one. And then reliability. This is where we're really going to spend some time today. The reliability of that asset, the reliability of my car is important. So think to some of the math that Matt shared with you, anytime between failures. And how do we incorporate that thinking into the scoring? So in the course of my consulting, and actually even prior to the work I did for other organizations before I was independent, I would see a lot of places where, and I even did this at the beginning, this is a long learning curve, is we would put numbers like, one, all of these guys, it was a yes or no, you got 1 or 0, or an age or reliability, it's something there's range between 1 and 5, or 1 and 25, or whatever. And then we add it all up and we get some number at the end. It's a 27. What is that? Is 27 good? Is it bad? Oh no. I don't know. I don't have definitions. So it's really, really important that we do one that we define. So like for age, let's define what constitutes old. It should set a flag and make you start getting nervous, right? And reliability is the same way. Because what you have to do is, if you have all 4 of these, and you want to weight them, and you want to really see what's the true sense of urgency around the replacement, you have to figure out how these all relate to each other. How many of you guys took or remember any of your Boolean Algebra? The whole if, then, and, or. Anybody remember? I don't know Boolean Algebra. All right, we're going to use some of that today, whether you like it or not. You guys can adapt it for yourselves because there's worksheets on the table. But let's walk through this a little bit first before we jump to Boolean Algebra. Okay, so focusing on reliability metrics, we got several that we can choose from. And these come from both just me sitting in my home office, isolated during the pandemic, and conversation with clients, and just things I'm seeing other people do. So you can do some pretty simple things like just count the number of work orders, right? How many times have I had a correct work? You could count the labor hours. Maybe it's more important, maybe I'm more concerned about how much time as opposed to a quantity of work. Maybe I'm really more concerned about how many jobs. The key here is that what question are you trying to answer, right? What type of reliability? Why are you trying to frame this for your audience? Not just for yourself, but those executives or the other people at that table, colleagues that are going to help make the ultimate decision here. It's important to think about what are you using, what metric are you going to use to describe the reliability of any given device. And to just make it even more fun and complicated, you may take different ones, right? You may say, in my radiology world, this metric is most important. I mean, the number of labor hours, because they're reflective of uptime and downtime, they're like a surrogate, right? And that's a revenue generating department, so maybe I want to focus on that. Maybe my general fleet sort of items, defibs, pumps, whatnot. Maybe I want to use a more general mean time between failure or the dollar spent or the count. Right? Maybe it's more general for that. Some devices may need their own. For a cancer center, well, you've got some fancy treatment planning system, right? It's kind of one of a kind. I want a custom design to run my reliability measure for that. Keeping in mind that you've got people like Al Dresch and his CMMS supplier colleagues, and when you have in your CMMS fields and existing calculations that you can use quickly to implement, okay, or that need to be built. And then we talked about earlier. We talked about methods of trends. I'm a big proponent of trends. Right? How many of you had your budget managed on a monthly basis? Like, why can you not schedule when the equipment goes down? I mean, come on. What do I have you for? I mean, that's kind of how you feel, right? I'm sure with you. At one point in my career, I'm kidding, we were making this on a weekly basis. It's crazy. So trends, looking over time, is it going up? Is it going down? Because this is all electromechanical devices. It's not when it goes down, or it's not if it goes down, it's when it goes down. Right? So look at the trend. And then regardless of which of the metrics you pick, basically you're looking for change over time. General consensus, and something I want to point out really quickly is you got to have a baseline to measure from, right? Good analytics has a baseline that you're measuring that trend change from. So think about, again, back to what type of equipment. Do I want to set a general one for everything? Do I want to set a baseline that's just for imaging and a different one that's just for general biomed and something different for lab? Do I have a particular device, like that cancer planning system, that needs its own specific baseline? Is that baseline the first 3 years, the first 5 years? Some folks say, well, that's the burning time. I'm going to see kind of the best and worst of this thing in the first 3 years. I want to use that as my baseline. Others say, no, I need that burning time, and then my best baseline is actually the next 3 years. You know your organization better than me. And it's math, right? It doesn't matter. None of these are wrong. You need to think about kind of how your organization functions, how it behaves. Okay? So you pick your metric, you define your baseline, and then you set up the equation so that every time I want to do this measure, I measure that metric over its life compared to that baseline. Did it go up or down? Or did it stay steady? Maybe it stayed steady. And then you have to decide what's acceptable. How much of that change is acceptable? Right? I mean, this is normalized, right? Think about your HTM procedures, your validation procedures. There's a tolerance, right? It could be plus or minus this many millivolts or millibars or whatever, right? Same thing here. A change in this reliability metric should be contained within a tolerance zone. What is that percentage? Again, this is unique to your organization's risk tolerance. How much risk is your organization able to handle? Right? It might be a 10% change, it might be a 2% change. That's 2%, probably 5%. Right? So then this is what allows you to create the scoring that we're going to use when we get into Boolean Algebra. Now, little sidebar, scoring. I'm in my binary phase right now. Okay. I think I'll artist, but I'm in my binary phase. Ones and zeros, yes or no. And the reason is, it drives me nuts to do surveys that say between 1 and 5, how was your service? Between 1 and 10, I don't know what the difference is between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4. So I always put the 1 in the middle. I think it's not defined. Now, maybe the people behind the survey know what 1, 2, 3, maybe they understand, but as a user, I don't understand what that variability is, right? It's not defined. Now, if you can define it, great. You can make it quantifiably clear, qualitatively clear, that's awesome. It does make the math a little harder when you start adding in more. So in some cases, remember that your tech plan is a guidance document. It's a plan. Just like when you make a plan to drive from here to back home to Phoenix, where I live. Yep, stuff happens. There's construction. You gotta adjust the plan. You gotta take a side or oh, you saw something interesting. I'll stop there. Whatever, right? It's a plan to guidance. It's not absolute. So don't overthink this. But don't underthink it either. All right. So now, fun with math. If you're using just end of life, it gets pretty easy to do the Boolean algebra, right? It's still manufactured and it is still serviced. Great. Life's good. When it goes out of manufacturing, the one means yes, it is no longer manufactured. It has reached the end of its manufacturing phase. Okay. I throw red in there, I throw yellow, black, it's just second. And then when they both go positive, it's no longer manufactured, it is no longer serviced, it's thrown 2 flags, now I got a red. Right? I make those decisions like I really take it. Do I have enough food to cover myself? Do I have a third-party resource? What's my support? Am I actually paying for it? And I gotta replace this. You gotta figure it out. Well, my suggestion is that you don't use just end of life as the deciding point because you have that treasure trove of data, right? So we're going to focus on reliability, but know that what we're going to talk about today with reliability, you could do with age, and you could do with multiple reliability factors. So you want to get really creative, right? So this is where you have to sort of what are all my possibilities. So you repeat your end of life, and then you put in reliability as these potential states. It's either within, and it goes back up, remember, it's either within tolerance or it's out of tolerance. The other thing you want to keep in mind too when you're doing these scores is I'm using sort of 1 as the negative state, the problematic state. It's out of manufacturing. It's out of service. That might be a problem. It's out of reliability tolerance. That might be a problem. It's important to be consistent there, otherwise this man takes you into a briar patch of okay. So again, being very diligent about how you define each of these measures. So I left these as question marks because this is where you have to do some thinking. This is where you have to decide the relationship between these measures. So we'll just take this first one for a minute. And you're going to get to do this yourselves here in just about worksheets. If this is the easy one, everything's in a positive state, so it's probably throws a green flag, right? That's an easy one. It's harder here. If you have out of manufacturer, that's normally a yellow flag. If the reliability is still in tolerance, are you okay with the yellow flag? That's still probably okay. For me, it would be. When service goes out, it's red. But the reliability measure is within tolerance. Bad. Look at this one. It's really good. This is really, this is like a really robust. I can drop off the roof and it still keep working. do I want this to change this flag color? Or do I want it to stay red? This is where you have to know your organization. Where you have to know the tolerance of your organization, right? This may be that you say, yeah, leave that red, because I'm going to that's problematic. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this in mind, that that's a really good line, and I'm going to push it at the end of the, when I get the whole racket stack, I'm going to push that into the bottom of the red pile, right? Because we never have enough time, right? So when your executive says, well, there's 27 things in the red bucket, we can only afford maybe half of them. These sort of lines, this sort of metric that says, we can push this one down. We can push it below the line, right? It gives you insight, it gives you information, you can communicate and help them make a better decision. And then on through. What if both of these, this is the next two are really interesting to me. What if it is manufactured? It is service, or maybe it just came out of manufacturing, but it is still service. But it's a dog. Where does that throw a yellow flag or red? Right? And so these are some of the things to think through. And this is kind of where the Boolean is. If this and this and that, what is the final column? So let's talk for a minute. So you see a lot of head nodding, see some scrunched foreheads. I don't know if it's because I keep saying Boolean Algebra or if it's something's not making sense. Because the next thing I want to do is work with you to start this journey, right? And the reason being, and I promise I will stop for questions. I got into this for 20 plus years ago because health systems and executives asked me and the team I was working on, how do I know what to replace? Where should I spend my money? Because all I get are people stomping their feet, threatening to quit. It's insane. How do I do this? I need some objectivity. Where do I spend my money? In the last 4 months to 6 months, that question's been turned upside down and inside out, which is now, I need to know what I can sweat. I need to know what is absolutely critical, and I need to have the detail, the devil in the detail, because I had someone recently ask me, well, if we're going to have to sweat all this, how do we then get the money to support it? Well, you're already supporting it. Good, bad, or different, on a penny or on a dollar. Our health systems, you guys know this better than me, they were running 2% margins on a good day before. Their predictions, they'll be running -7, if not worse. And health systems are closing already. So they don't have, it's not like they're just, some of them are still pretty, but they need your help right now to make these very critical decisions that are going to help them determine whether they can weather the next 2 years and deliver care in our communities. So, the work that Matt talked about earlier today, getting that HTM program in place and driving those operational benefits, and then applying them the very next day in this sort of strategic fashion to help your organization through this storm. So, questions about the process? Yes.
So you're in the support highlight, have you divided driven that down, whether it's in the support by or in the support by ISO, and then even if you take that a step further, you go into support +1 year, +2 year, +3 year, +5 year. I mean, if you're building it,
I don't understand +1, +2, +3.
So if it's in support, say in 2015, you'd be into support +1 year. And so that's actually a little risk that you're going to financially to however you can start.
Okay, so the question is, I'm going to back up here real quick to this page. Actually, let's do it on this page. The question is, have I got more granular on like the service in particular in the service? Yes and no. It mostly depends on the sophistication of the organization and the resources they have available to us. Sometimes that's overthinking it for some organizations, to be perfectly honest, right? It has to do with kind of what are the capabilities you have available to you. So you guys have some capabilities that others do not have. Okay. You could do the same thing. This column here at the end, other, you could build another layer in. So when I say end of service, it is strictly manufacturer, end of service, yes or no. I don't go into the third party clause normally. I don't go into third party those because I've worked in and within the organizations to know that there are probably some policies written or cultural that define whether an organization is willing to buy parts from a third party. Now, we can get into that level of conversation, then yeah, I would create another level of scoring. I create another column and do the Boolean Algebra if that's a method. The other way we've tackled it more recently is to use the end of life measures and age, and comparing age, doing this sort of same sort of acceptable range thing with age as a life marker, or the age, like almost like this reliability algorithm or calculation, where we look at what is the actual age of the device compared to its estimated useful life as defined by whatever source we're using. I have an organization that really internal expected life expectancy data, so I've been using some aggregate data, and I would say regularly, I do not use intentionally the HA blue book. That's a depreciation guide. I use that over if I'm doing financial scoring. And then I use that as where is its depreciation. Okay. So that's kind of the way we look at down service and inside and outside of this useful life to sometimes moderate that. But I would advise if you have the capability to do these others, I would stick with capital ones and zeros, and I think sort of relationship. Just remember, whatever you're doing this in, I mean, some of the tools I'll get to you in a minute. Some of the tools give you a lot of capability inside the tool. Some of this I do most of my work outside of the tool, in usually a spreadsheet format. But with the way that we're creating the formulas and relationships, using the Excel, if you will, as a model to then communicate back to CMMS suppliers to configure your particular platform to your particular model here. So that's kind of the
The key is getting buy-in for organization. What are your definitions specifically? You're good in your plan as determined by the OPM, that's fine. But if you have support within your group development journey, you can extend that into life, what's acceptable risk-based one, out to 5 years, maybe to extend the life of that asset.
Right. Which is why I advocate for more than just the end of life, to have a scoring tool that has multiple columns that give you that ability to prioritize. Even within the red bucket, it may still be red, but you can push it to the bottom of the red bucket. Because what the executives want to know is, what happens if I have one? And you can say, not much for the next 5 years, or at least the next 3 years. Not much happens. But we can be aware of these circumstances. And because the service is discontinued, and because we have this, we're able to go definitely 3 years after that, might get a little squishy, whatever that may say. You can have that sort of risk-based conversation. What's your statement?
And I broke down the 3 tiers. The first being full support, which got support 0. The second tier being end of life, but parts still available. And the third tier being parts no longer available. So if this thing fails, it's going to have significant consequences, right? So the scoring was exponential for that third tier. Now, the recommendation think about begin with the end in mind. What are you doing? You're doing it so that you can present a report to your executive leadership, your financial folks. These are the things that you should consider for replacement based on this objective criteria, right? So first and foremost, this is an opportunity for you to hold yourself up as a strong partner for that executive team, because as Carol said, you got a wealth of information at your disposal that you can bring to bear to help make better decisions, right? So on that, I always recommend sitting down with your CFO and or your COO, and first you ask the question, would you be interested in a tool that will help you make replacement decisions based on objective criteria?
Hey, Al, can we keep going? Because I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I want to get these guys to the workshop part to actually do some
Okay.
work. But I appreciate you echoing the earlier messages.
Yeah, and all I'm going to say, when you create the scoring, sit down with those folks with them, because you don't want to present the report and have them argue with you.
Okay. Nice advice. Nice advice. It's always better to work a team sport as a team. Always. Okay. So, in front of you, you should have 3 sheets of paper. The first one is what I consider mission critical, right? There are some extras on the side here that will turn out equally bad. So if you don't have one, we can grab this for you. While you're grabbing the sheet from the side or whatever, let me walk you through this page. First and foremost, pick what reliability. Pick which reliability metric you're going to use, right? What are you going to measure? No fruit baskets. Definitely no cornucopias. It's okay to have the you can have galas and all that. No oranges mixed in, all right? Be very clear which metric you're going to measure. And then from our earlier conversation about the standardized, again, we have all of the standard failures. Are you going to use them all? You know, we're in a place, let's just pull them all up. Or are you working, because some organizations will look at a specific equipment type. They do their planning by equipment types. I only want to look at the user bus right now. I only want to look at CT scanners right now. Or are you looking at your whole fleet, your whole asset? Right? So decide what kind of failure am I going to make sure everybody's on board. A little bit what I was saying, make sure this worksheet is also a good way to communicate to your financial partners and your clinical partners. Here's what I'm measuring from a technical perspective, and this is why it's important for you as well as me. Maybe it's some subset, maybe it's all of these. And then we have to do that work around a baseline. Okay? So depending on which metric and which failure code you're putting, what's my baseline going to be? Right? Am I going to set the baseline the first 3 years, first 5 years? Am I going to give it a burn and pick 3 years? Define that. Write it down. Write it down. Any of you that have done programming, any of you that have worked in Excel in any amount of detail, you got to get that you get that formula right, everything goes to heck pretty quickly. Right? Write it down. Test it. Make sure that it does. Make sure it tells you what you want it to tell you. Right? You know, okay, I know that if I put these 2 numbers in, that the trend should be going up, the trend should be going going down. Test this. Make sure you got that formula. You don't want to run it in your whole inventory. And then right, I'm gonna get that straight. And then what's acceptable to your organization? What's the tolerance for that? Ones or zeros. So let's take about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and I want to hear from you what you picked in each of these and why. Because I think the why behind what you choose, there's no wrong answer, much like Matt's assignment, no wrong answer. What I think is really interesting is why you pick what you pick. Right? Why do you design it this way? Because that's where we're going to get some shared learning. 5 minutes. If something's not clear, you got a question, I'm happy to, otherwise I'm happy to help. Otherwise you can stay on
I did have a quick question. So when you're running this scoring system, are you categorically grouping devices as a device type? Or are you scoring any models, or are you individually considering individual assets for the scoring system? Noting that obviously there would be hundreds of unique models and thousands of devices on the system.
Yeah, great question. Just to repeat, when I do this, am I scoring at the whole equipment type level, at groups of devices, or at individual devices levels? Correct? That was the question? Yeah. Yes. Again, for my clients, it depends on where they are on their strategic tech planning maturity cycle, right? Some folks have never looked at this before. Others are pretty sophisticated and we're refining and enhancing. In general, my deliverables look at every asset in the inventory. So I've done projects that had 400 or 500 line items because they only wanted to look at devices over a certain financial threshold. And I've done inventories that were well over 50,000 line items. Yes, that is attached. But you also know that in that 50,000, there are flaws, if you will, of the same make model. You know, there might be 10 of the same make model, there might be 500 of the same make model, right? So you look it up once, you score it once and copy paste. What we do then, once we have scored, and I prefer to score every asset, because then what we can do, we have that granular detail, and then we can zoom out. And we can say, let's look at our CTs, but let's look at them individually, right? And so we pull them out, we can see all 20 of them, and we start making overarching assessments. They're mostly green, they're mostly yellow, or they're all over the rainbow, but at this physical location, because I always keep the physical location aligned with each asset, then maybe you have a physical location that's a hotspot, right? And so then you can look at it and say, do I want to replace those? Do I want to reallocate? Do I want to move things around in my organization? Because I've got some yellows that would, for all intents and purposes, become greens, because maybe it's a CT in an emergency department that's running 24/7 beating the heck out of it. But if I move it to the clinic that's got a hotspot, it'll weigh out, it'll weigh less. It's beyond its life cycle. So we use it to be able to zoom in and out, but you've got to score at the individual asset level to be able to do that zooming in and out. And to be able to slice not only by equipment type, but physical location. And that's becoming more and more important. Yeah. Did you have a question? All right, let's give it another 2 minutes. Sure.
I think that this is less accusatory than abuse. That terminology. I would like to see a code for something that's correlated to rework. So the technician goes on the floor, he does something, didn't do it properly, and now the system has to be reworked. That's something I'd like to try to do.
So hold on to that. Those are some great comments. Hold on to that, because at the end, Matt and I are going to wrap this back up, and I want him to hear that too. Okay, let's take a few minutes here and just get some ideas. So let's just start right here. What metric did you, Jeff? Did you pay attention? If you don't mind, I apologize. Could you use the microphone again to the recording?
I chose temperature-corrected maintenance work orders, specifically based on the number of visits we've had for that particular device. I only have a select number of devices, so it's really narrow down. Technical failure codes, mine actually one failure, battery failure, yes, it's not applicable in my particular condition. Compression failure is certainly one of the ones that really struck a chord with me, because if a pH probe or a pressure transducer calibration 20 are not catching it throughout the year, we're only doing it on an annual basis, that would be opening ourselves up to a great deal of risk during the year of that, as that transducer is changing over time. And so decreasing the amount of planned maintenance from what that mentioned, and doing more cursory checks throughout the year will certainly implement and reduce those numbers. But I also think that the environmental factors and use conditions, those two things, along with use and negligence, those we can attribute to training in a clinical setting, working with our clinicians, working with nurses on the devices. And I don't consider event power cord to be a service ticket issue when it being a corrected issue on the clinical side. So there's some areas there that would be eliminated and not necessarily implemented into this method. And as far as the age of the device, actually it's aging. However, the manufacturers guarantee for another 10 years at this point. So there's the risk of running out of parts is very low. So gauging the risk tolerance from a business perspective is one of the biggest factors in this, because if you have a team of biochemists that can completely repair machines and parts are available, you can go far out of that. So it'll be interesting to see what other people say about that.
So thank you. So what I heard is you picked a subset of these codes because the type of equipment you support, some of these are more important or applicable than others.
Well, others pose more risk than
higher risk. Great. Yeah, you're doing a risk assessment.
Yeah, but what
is our, and as a business, as a hospital, what is the safety risk to a patient?
Right.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Super. Now, I want to make sure I did not confuse you guys with this baseline thing. That's not the measure of the thing. And so I want to make sure, because you said something, I thought we want to get confused on. When we're calculating the baseline average, this is where do you want to start measuring? What do you want to set the baseline for the number of corrective maintenance work orders? So would you take like the first maybe 2 or 3 years and say what was the average number of work requests, corrective work orders I had in that first, we'll say 3 years? And that's my baseline. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I would say a baseline for the first break-in period. The first year of purchase should be covered under manufacturer warranty. Always do a post-warranty expiration service with the manufacturer for that device. That way, anything that failed during that time could be corrected under that warranty. Then after that, going forward, I would certainly consider the 3 to 6 years after that.
Does that make sense to everybody? I don't know how we're setting that baseline. Great. Okay. You want to tell us your story? Thank you.
So I thought for the first one, I did labor hours and parts and service costs. I didn't really very well.
Oh, an overachiever, you're going to do 2?
Sorry.
You're going to need to talk afterwards. Yeah. We're going to do some fun Boolean Algebra.
And then because to me it wasn't the number of work orders, it was what the amount of time spent and that cost the company for it.
Yep.
And the failure codes, I literally went software failure. Because to me, everything below that is facilities, is like we spoke about user errors, training, doing it to get it up, and what the dedicated power line, that sort of stuff. So it's not really the machine's fault. From software failure up is kind of the machine's fault. From failure from the utility systems down is kind of more the building environment, things like that. It's not the machine's fault because I didn't have enough power.
Right.
Like that. And then I snapshot this, let's say, into the post warranty.
Okay. Right.
So that's built into the cost of the machine.
Right. So how many years post warranty though? Because remember, this is our baseline, and we're going to measure against it.
So once I start paying for the repairs, that's when I start measuring what those repairs cost.
Agreed. So you're always you're measuring the ongoing average every year, but you have to be able to have something to compare that to know if your trend is going up or down. So that's why we want to have that maybe 3-year window post warranty. And let's just say in your example, the average number of labor hours for that particular equipment type is 25 hours per year was the average in that for those 3 years post warranty. So now our baseline is 25 hours per year. Now, 7 years out, you measure it again. 7 years out, if that number is 30 or 12, right? You want to be able to see, is this going up or down? And ideally, if you're measuring it ongoing, that you have like a graph that tells you, is it going like this, or is it a one-way trajectory sort of thing? And because that's what if you will, there's a little bit of gambling going on when we're making financial decisions about whether it's a facility or a device, is how much am I willing to roll the dice, right? How much risk? If it's almost a straight line trajectory in one direction or another, then my risk is less because I know more, right? If it's a roller coaster, there may be higher risk in whatever decision I make. So that's why it's important to have both of those things as you go through. You want to tell me some more?
I'm not sure that I understand why we would not put the hardware as we're judging reliability. Reliability.
we're going to know the number of values. We did the initial 3 years.
Nice. So go tell us your story. Because you're not wrong. Like I said, there's no wrong answer. It's about being really clear in your definitions and being able to say, I chose this, I defined this for these reasons, and rest or whatever it might be. So yeah.
We chose the number of labor hours because the reasoning behind that is you're going to capture work orders in the labor hours. And in our specific case, we work for an ISO. So we're trying to provide value, show the value to the customer. You're paying us X amount of dollars, you're getting X amount of labor. And then do the equations, extrapolate the costs that they're incurring. For the failure codes, we chose component, failure, non-battery, and network connectivity. Because that is becoming more and more part of our for the baseline average, again, as like I said, we did the initial 3 years of service because we want to know from day one how many failures we experienced in a 3-year period to establish baseline.
Did you do the last one, the acceptable range or tolerance range?
We didn't get that.
That's what I'm trying to learn from you guys. No, that's good. All right, let's do one more. You guys were working really hard. Tell us the story. Cool. And then after this one, I want to move to the next worksheet. Watch out, man. I think I'm going to try to do some fire now.
Okay, so it shows the mean time between groups.
Okay.
For Apple, for your battery, not battery, calibration failure and software failures.
Okay.
And then for baseline average within the initial 3 years of service.
Okay. And did you guys get to the tolerance?
Yeah, we did 10%. It was a little bit of room, but it's generally.
Right. Super. Thank you. Couple of thoughts on these. Remember, this is a work in progress. It's never done. Just sort of thinking that thing. But I think what we're finding is that as we set this tolerance, we start saying because 10% is a number I use a lot, right? Because it's a starting place. It's a number that you sort of feature, right? But you run this for a little while, like 3 to 5 years out, maybe you go back and you really based on your technology plan, you're looking at all that. You can do measures and say, well, that 10% too much or too little. So I tighten that up, maybe I should tighten that to 7% or something, right? Yeah, no wrong answers. It's about learning. This should be a learning process, making you smarter about your inventory and making you smarter about what needs to measure, because you may decide in 3 to 5 years you want to take a different measure, or you want to include more or less factors. Right? So all about getting smarter with this. Okay. Now, relationship part. The worksheet's already made out for you. If you didn't, I would ask you to figure out sort of think more about your tolerance window. But start figuring out the regular rate. And for those of you who know where some of you may guess why is the right number. I expect years. And then it's not going to say zero. Red, yellow, green is just, it's called a stoplight. And it's exactly what I thought, right? Driving down the road, you see yellow and you react a certain way. You see red, you react a certain way. You see green, you react a certain way. Executives, we are trained to react a certain way because so much is coming through. We don't have the liberty of looking at great detail on everything. Some things that we're going to want to go deep. Some things very deep. Some things just a little more deep. But we make that decision because you Say, here. Here are the red things. I want you to pay attention to those. I need you to pay attention to the rest. That's where we create statistics. So that's why we're using that. So think about that in terms of how do you want this math, and those of you guys that are gentlemen, the overachievers doing too, if you want, put both factors in there. Give you one extra problem. Or if you want to add in age, you can use that extra one. And tell you that I do this for a client, I literally take out a piece of white paper and write relationship. Because the equation that you're going to put into your CMMS or into your Excel spreadsheet or your Access database is really, really long. A lot of different statements. So think through this. Oops. Think through these relationships. So let's take five minutes or so, and then I want you to say, I want your stories about why did you make the relationship one way or another. I think we're starting to almost teaching each other by thinking through these models. For those of you that, as you're working through this, for those of you that may be inclined to use a sliding scale of between 1 and 3 or 1 and 5 or 1 and whatever, keep that in mind too, that this same sort of exercise is important when you start setting the cutoffs for granularity, right? So if you're going to use some sort of a methodology where you sum up the value, then you have to know, where do I cut that back to my example and look at it, summed up to 27, what does that mean? Is that real or not? So keep that in mind as you do this. There's nothing wrong with doing that sort of scale model. You just have to have a lot of tight definitions, and you have to have the ability to say where's the break point between green to yellow to red. Okay. Anybody ready to share their how they made their decisions, their relationships. We'll just do a couple of folks on this one. You sure? Repeat. All right. Ignoring you people right around the end, they all
For my other factor, I put reality. Key component for my customer, information. So following your model, I put 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1 reality. My first line under the color was all 3 zeros right there. Line 5 of this, I have it following for green, yellow, red, red.
So green, green, yellow, yellow, red, right?
All 3 bottom ones are red.
Gotcha.
Because the big spread code and it's got a one on reliability, it's something we have to look at very much scrutiny.
Okay.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the reliability we did last time. I did the calculation for 3 things. Math is mean now. So I think that's something that the customer turns out where the department is about. And then that way, if they do more than just one way, you can always slice and dice it, you can always filter out. So that's why from the accepted or applicable failure code, just select all. You put that into an Excel spreadsheet, but every one you can always filter down and carry down to exactly what you're looking for. If you don't do the calculation at all, you don't have the data to look at.
Sure. So you raised a really interesting point. What we're doing here, remember, I said we're going to focus strictly like a laser on the technical aspects. You can do this very same activity from a financial perspective and a clinical perspective. And then do this sort of table where your top part is my technical score, my clinical score, my financial score, right? As HTM professionals, you're going to be responsible for the technical score. Nobody else can do that. Nobody else has the data. You may have the opportunity to demonstrate leadership by helping your financial and clinical colleagues create a very similar sort of scoring for them. Rather than mean time between failure, maybe it's uptime or downtime, but it's relative to not maintenance necessarily, but their patient workflow, right? Their volume of patients, right? So they're going to want to think of it from their clinical operations, just like we think of it from our technical operations, right? So you can take this home and talk to your colleagues and help them create their scoring sheet. And then you merge the 3 again, it's red, yellow, green. And that's where organizations can then make decisions and say, technical is going to trump this time. It's going to be the leader, it's going to lead our decision, or clinical is going to lead our decision, or financial is going to lead whatever, or the combination, right? Then they have a much more informed decision. Much more informed. Okay. Anybody else want to share their relationship? Okay. It's right before lunch. I don't want to get that. Yes.
I do have a question to pose to the group. How many of you actually have devices that are past end of manufacturer functioning in your hospitals and clinics now?
Thousands, tens of thousands of them are out there.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Right. And that's a really good point when you think about what's the inventory I'm going to cover all of this. You need to put scope this where it makes a strategic difference for your organization, right? And you may want to grow into it. You may want to start narrow and grow into something more broad. In general, what I have found over the last 25 years, and this is very general, I don't have any support, it is anecdotal. The vast majority, probably, I would say probably the 70-30 rule applies. 70% of the inventories that I assess are green. But I'm not doing, in most of those cases, I have not done the reliability piece. This is strictly from an end of life perspective. The other 30% is somewhere between in manufacturer and total end of life from manufacturer. That's kind of what my general experience has been. You add the reliability in though, you're going to catch some green that go yellow or red real fast, right? You put, you do the same sort of thing with age, like that 30 years old. Do I want to wait till it quits and just die and buy one? Or do I want to do a fleet and replace all my markers that are 30 years old and do it proactively, right? But at least you have a flag in that now. You can make a decision, right? So what I want to leave you with is this last one, and I put this in at the very last minute. This is really more an overall action. It's a tool that a friend of mine put together probably 5-6 years ago to help me with a team when we had a bunch of initiatives we were trying to put together. We were trying to push forward. So some of you may be in organizations that are not doing tech. You may be in organizations that are not doing AEM. You're trying to push this initiative uphill, right? It's like pushing water uphill. This I found to be a really helpful tool, and you can visually and all different ways. But essentially, it's steps you through so you think logically and not just sort of a splatter diagram of how you're going to get this initiative through. Super simple. What are you trying to do? You're trying to convince your organization to do a strategic technology plan because you know the value of your own department, you know the value of your organization. That's your end goal. So get it started. What are the steps to getting there? Well, we talked about a lot of them today. You need a technical scoring methodology, a political, financial scoring methodology. You need a CMMS that can do the same scoring. You need access to the, you got to get those 3 components anyway. What are the challenges? Ooh, none of us ever have access to the ERP, right? That's the supply chain's financial system. I don't have deep access into any deep financial systems, right? But the opportunity is, I can bring you a tech score in a month or less, right? And we can start there. We can get that far down the road. That's an opportunity. Double check, go back. Did I forget something? Right? Did I forget something in terms of steps? You know your organization too. One of the steps I put in here in terms of the end goal, and I talked about this in my bigger presentation. Who are the influencers? Who are the decision makers? Is there one level of decision making? Are there multiple levels? Are you part of the system? So you have to make decisions at the local level and at a mothership somewhere. Those are steps in this process so that you're prepared, you know what everything is that I got to do. Some of these will be sequential, some of them are in parallel, whatnot. You might want to do that loop a couple times just to really make sure you feel like you really know, put this back together. And then, who needs to be involved? Who are your allies? Who needs to be an ally? Right? Maybe they don't. So, Albrecht mentioned the CFO. Do you have a relationship with the CFO right now? Do you have a relationship with the COO, the Chief Nursing Officer? Do you need these people to move this forward? Make sure you've identified them. You need to go back and go, oops. I think that one of my steps is I got to build a relationship with 2 of the 10 people that are on this list. So I don't, they don't. Right? And then put time frames around all those. What are your mile markers? Right? What are those milestones? Do this as much for yourself as for the overall project. There's nothing better than feeling like you got something done. Right? We're constantly putting background. Give yourself milestones and say, I achieved this much further down the road. But also, in that communication with your executives, they can see how quickly, you want to, this is your end goal, and we can do it in this period of time. Can you do it in 20% less time? Maybe, maybe not. Can you, but at least you have, this is what puts the bumper guards around. Again, this is a tool that can, whatever kind of project you're trying to. It's just helpful in terms of organizing your thoughts so that you can make the best use of that 2 minutes that you might have with the executive, or 15 minutes you have with your boss to get this thing moving forward. All right. I think we're just going to wrap at this point in terms of teaching and workshopping, and just see what other, Keith had a great comment that I wanted you to hear at during one of the sessions, but other questions, other comments, and then let you guys out of here and go get your lunch. Keith, would you mind grab the microphone? Any other questions, or was this helpful?
That's super.
I think it's, reviewing the failure response, and I just want to make sure we introduce, we're saying that abuse and neglect was kind of incendiary language. I recommend that maybe the term physical damage, because something can be physically damaged and another sign like it could be asphalt, or it could be somebody hit with a hammer, or physical damage or something hurt. And then I had another comment that I saw. You have one that said, I don't remember the exact term, but it was basically maintenance abuse. The fault was caused by maintenance. I need just like to see something help us track reworks. So if I set a check up on the floor, you repair something within a specified time period, it has to go back up and re-repair the same fault, maybe it repaired correctly the first time. Just some kind of tracking.
Great metric is that repeat repair is good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, Matt and I have one ask of you, which is take this home and start using it. Use the list of failure codes, see how it feels, see how it fits. Apply it to things like HTM, tech planning, a host of other, I mean, just like the example there. And then share back with us, how are you using it? How is it working? What did not work? What worked great? And we'd love to work with you to maybe, we want to amplify your voices, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate the work that you're doing on this and speaking. I do agree with the point that mentioned failure caused by maintenance. Kind of maybe scratch my head a little bit. The other one that I would say is the user or user, maybe can be used internally, would be really helpful. Because you can look at technicians and see who's using that code, why they use it, and kind of drill down to those specific problems.
That's nice. You're using it to manage your staff. I just thought of it as if I was a nurse manager, I want that data to know what I needed to do to train my nurses. But that's a great point. As managers, we can manage our own technician staff.
I can respond to that based on maintenance. And
Hold on one second. Hold on.
Sorry. We've had instances where operating maintenance was a couple of layers. For example, the literature says in order to clean a computer problem, use this type of chemical. Don't use isopropyl alcohol. But they'll listen and then they think of isopropyl alcohol and on a lot of melt off. And so that's an example of use by maintenance. Although operating maintenance, that'd be one example.
I think what is encouraging about doing this kind of work is that is shifting from just CMMS being a chore. So, the managers here to think about how do we set this up so we can get something. And really smart conversations about managing using data. I'm going to stop because